Hi, this is Ed, and you're on Global TV Talk Show. And our very special guest today will be with us in just a few minutes, Dr. Nancy Wiley, W-I-L-E-Y. She's an author for a long time and a counselor. And we're going to talk about her book called Divine Trust. And it's all about being happy. And I'm looking forward to having this wake-up call. It's almost 7 a.m. here in Southern California, and I could use that. So stand by. Dr. Nancy Wiley will be right with us. Thank you. Have to push the right button. Okay, this is Ed, and I'm in San Diego a little after 7 a.m. on September 16. It's a Friday, thankfully. And our special guest today is Dr. Nancy Wiley, and she's coming to us from South Florida. Hi.
Hi, Ed. Thank you for having me on your show. And I want to thank you and all your listeners.
Thank you very much. So here's the deal. There are very few people in the world watching this original broadcast this morning. That's by design. Although we don't keep it a secret, we don't publicize these original broadcasts. We just want to make sure it's spontaneous between me and my guest. But after we do a little snip and tuck on the editing, the program will go worldwide and be available forever, mainly a year, through our websites and our YouTube channel and our LinkedIn connections and all of the derivatives from that, so that the eventual readership or audience on this program could easily exceed 100,000. And that would be across weeks and months. We will give you the program link. You could do whatever you want with it. I will sponsor it on our sites, which is globalbusinessnews.net and globaltvtalkshow.com, and a very active YouTube channel and our LinkedIn and beyond. Dr. Wiley, could you please hold up the front cover of your book, Divine Trust?
Sure. There it is.
Okay, can you bring it a little slowly, very closely in? It looks like a palm tree with a sunset behind it.
It's my front yard. It was on I woke up to I had to go to a doctor's appointment and they could only.
Sunrise.
Yes, sunrise. And it was so foggy. It was in January. So I was like, oh my God, that is so friggin' beautiful. I videoed it and I photographed it. And one of my friends said, that is a sign. You need to put it on your book cover.
There you go. Now, what is in the white box? What does that say? It's hard to read.
It says Divine Trust, a practical guide to end your suffering and find your way home.
Okay, now we're going to get into the book in a few minutes, but not right now. Let's get to know each other. Okay. So I've been in the PR business for forever, and advertising and marketing services connected with corporate Fortune 500 type companies who recruit and develop and deploy global talent, and then all the services connected with it, including tax and legal and other compliances. And so our audience is made up with a lot of those kinds of people around the world, about 70% US and Canada and Latin America. And when I say Latin America, it's Mexico City and Sao Paulo and Rio. 20% in Europe, about 10% in Asia Pacific. Okay, let's talk about the book. And this is it a spiritual book? Meaning I'm going to teach you about how you can do what I achieved? Or is it something about how to help people just get out of a bad place? Or both?
It's both. It's both. I know we talked a little bit before we started the recording, but I am a scientist, right? And if you can't prove it and it's not reproducible, because I've done tons and tons of scientific research, years and years. So if it's not reproducible, it's not valid, right? So that's only true.
Wait, reproducible meaning measurable?
Reproducible in that, like, I state a hypothesis and give it to someone else. If they can't reproduce my hypothesis, then it's not valid in the scientific world. So science went on to about 15 years ago to meta-analysis. So this is really going down a scientific route. So it said that any hypothesis had to be put into this. They would take thousands and thousands of research topics on that topic. And if it wasn't refuted or it didn't support it, it was nullified. So I said, God, we're going into the dark ages of science, because the only thing that's proven is that smoking can cause cancer. Everything else is disproven. And there is we have this vast wasteland of science. It really bothered me. So then I started to go into quantum physics explanation. I mean, this is way off topic, but quantum physics states that the observer, just by the fact of observing it, stating a hypothesis, will collapse the wave into particles, into reality. So whatever the scientist says they're going to find, right? Or they collapse reality into it. And I'm like, dang, so that means it's fluid. And scientists don't even see that. Everything's fluid. So just by stating a hypothesis, you're going to make it so. So that discouraged me as a scientist, because then anything I would state would become reality. So that's the way quantum physics has brought about everything. So it's just like you're in a vast unknown right now, a vast fluid nothingness. So as a scientist, I'm like, I felt compelled to continue on my right-brained investigation of this reality that we call planet Earth and human life. And that's what led me to this. Like, I became a seeker early on. And along with all my scientific studies, I also started meditating when I was 16 and got great books, very foundational books. The Power of Your Subconscious Mind by Dr. Joseph Murphy, and Steve Jobs' only favorite book, the only one he downloaded onto his phone, was Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda. So these two influential books early on, before I was 20, really set a tone. Like, it started to wake me up to, like, what is it that we're not seeing? What is it that we're not experiencing in this human life, in this human form? And I kept studying scientifically and spiritually. So I used my fervor for science and also applied it to becoming, if I could, enlightened in this incarnation. So I finally, years I did this. If your viewers are watching, I'm twiddling my thumbs with mantra meditation or transcendental meditation, which I had very, very little progress. I did not move my spiritual needle at all. Then I switched to another scientific thing called Holosync, which would use brainwave entrainment. Did that for 8 years. It's not like I did it for a week, right? I did it for 8 years, still like twiddling my thumbs. I'm like, okay, I was becoming a little more psychic. Maybe I was having more unexplained phenomenon and occurrences in my life, but still very little movement on my needle. It wasn't until 2008, Learning Strategies, which is a great corporation, put out Pathway to Enlightenment with Jed Amali. And I took that course. And then I started to see some huge change. And then I studied with her in group mentoring for a couple of years. And it became something I did almost daily. I would listen to her, I would do her meditations, and oh my God, that was it for me. That moved my needle completely. And I realized that I no longer suffer. She would have us work on states of being for months at a time. Of course, gratitude, love. And then my favorite was trust, trusting in the divine, in the sea of awareness, God, whatever name you give that energy that hosts everything. And something about that state of being would just take, no matter what was happening in my outer world, no matter how out of sorts I got, I would go into that state of being and it would do something like this. Whoom, and I'd be right in direct relationship with source, God, whatever name you give that energy, and communing with it, and then surrendering to it. And eventually, just every morning now, I give my life, I surrender to it to work co-creatively to create my day.
Let's stop for a second and jump aside here. There are a lot of words and a lot of thoughts expressed. So let's back up and tell people about your practical life. You were a dentist, but not just a dentist, a doctor, and highly educated in this realm. Why don't you give us a little bit about your degrees from Columbia University?
Sure. So I got a bachelor's in biology from University of Maryland, and then went on to get a master's in nutrition from Columbia. Then I did research at Johns Hopkins Medical School for a year in the Department of Human Nutrition, study of human nutrition, and got published with world-renowned Barbara Rolls. And then from there, I went back to Columbia and got my Doctor of Dental Sciences. And I stayed after that. I did another program and I got my certification in orthodontics. And then I left there and came to South Florida and got in with a beautiful practice working with children. It was great doing orthodontics, mostly for children. And then I left my group practice and started my own practice in 2003. And I worked there until 2020.
Okay, so this is quite a journey, and all this time you were still a thinker, a practitioner of the spiritual.
Seeker. I considered myself a seeker, and my husband would say, when are you going to stop learning? When are you going to stop reading? When are you going to stop going to courses? When are you going to stop? And he goes, haven't you mastered it by now? And I'm like, I didn't think I had, until in my orthodontic practice, I was 1.5 miles away from Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, and working on the afternoon of February 14th. I'll never forget this. So I'm working on a patient and I have a mom standing next to me, and she gets an alert on her phone, and she like, there's an active shooter at Douglas. And of course, we were like, is it a prank? Is it real? And all of a sudden we heard sirens and helicopters, and oh my God, when I left, I mean, we could not move forward after that. We just closed the practice down. This was like 2 something in the afternoon. When I ended up leaving at, I don't know, 4 o'clock, there were cars parked along, just pulled up, like they blocked the roadway. They just pulled up onto the sidewalk, abandoned their cars. So these parents were frantic, and they created gridlock. No one was moving. So they just abandoned their cars and walked the rest of the way to Douglas High School, hoping to, get there to see that their teen was okay. It was so crazy. It was so surreal. The next day, of course, we canceled the rest of the week of seeing patients. But me and my office manager and my head assistant came to the office just so we could be there in case anyone needed us. And we found out at 5 the next morning, I lost a patient, and one of my staff lost her sister in the shooting. So it was so surreal. Like a lot, I would say most teenagers did not show up for about 6 weeks. And when they did start showing up, they had a vacant look in their eyes, like post-traumatic stress is the only thing I could think of. And at the time, I had a patient who was a psychiatrist, and he said, an adult, of course, he said, you watch, they're going to start committing suicide. And I'm like, I don't see the connection. He said, either they're going to have survivor's guilt or they're going to have severe anxiety. They won't be able to deal with moving forward in their life because they'll be so traumatized and stressed out from the past. And he was right. In 2019, we started hearing about people attempting suicide, committing suicide. And that's when I'm like, I have this knowledge, I have this certainty of this divine aspect and understanding of why things happen. And if only I could help other people, be the hand, be the bridge for them to understand what I understood, I could totally alleviate their suffering. So that's when I was given the assignment to write the book.
The assignment came from spiritual.
Yes.
Okay, now let's back up.
Mhm.
The kids that you were talking about just a minute ago,
Mhm.
I don't even know how to say this, but why would they commit suicide? Because they felt guilty of being alive?
So survivor's guilt is, one of their good friends was murdered. So they're like, that person was so much better than
Or
me.
just shot, and maybe not dead, but just shot up.
Mhm.
I'm sure there were a lot more injured than
Oh,
killed.
there were 17 murdered and 17 injured. But the kids that saw it, I mean, they were crawling over
Right,
bodies to get out of there.
right.
Um, yeah, if you only knew like what I knew from some of the experiences of what I've been told. So it was horrendous, right? It was horrendous. And I have
So how do you find meaning in all this? I mean, what? We don't have to get into
right.
why that jerk had a gun and why he took it out on everybody, but how
So
do you
much
deal
more
with
than
all
that.
that?
It's so much deeper than that. And us as co-creators, we have a responsibility. Now, it's not that we were the ones that, had pulled the trigger. No, but as a collective, we have a responsibility to co-create. And that's where humanity is falling short. We have lost our compass. We have lost our compass. We don't understand who and what we are.
What's
And
co-create mean in this gesture here?
it means that, okay, so without giving the whole book away, what I am shown, what I have come to know and be certain of, is that we are the divine incarnate. We come here, we're given amnesia because it would be no fun for the creator to know how amazing it was and to have all of this easily revealed to us. There's something about waking up to the truth of this that's so profound and so rewarding and uplifting, to know that you are the divine, that you can change things, that you do change things, that you can create.
Now
And when
you feel this way. I mean, this is a major thing you just said here, that divine meaning not godlike, but you have an understanding of how things fit.
no,
Okay,
no.
give it to me and my audience.
Okay, I am saying we are God. We are the God incarnated. It wants to know its divinity. I mean, this is the evolution of humanity. I mean, this is so far out there, but we as humans are so ignorant to this aspect of ourselves
Yeah.
that we all have in our hearts this calling. I know I'm more than this. I know there's more to life. Most people say that, but they don't know how to get there. They don't know where to take the first step, how to get there, how to see it. And I'm here as an actual representation. There are many people like me on the planet. It's not just me. I'm just aware of it. And everything I can do, everyone who's listening can do it too. They just have to be given the right path. They have to persevere. They have to want it. and they have to know that they can do it. And it takes one person to step out there, to be the example, to be one that will show, to be vulnerable, to say, holy crap, I used to be this way. And now I'm completely opposite. I come from the present moment, and I use my mind, my left brain, from the direction of my consciousness, not the other way around. So we're trained to use our left brain. If you can't see it, smell it, it's not reproducible. It's not real. That's not the real makeup of us. It's coming from this consciousness, using that to help us, but to be in the present moment, to not react, but to respond, knowing this is sacred knowledge that has been suppressed, that is now ready to be made available. It's speaking, it's asking me and others to make this available to all of humanity. But will humanity
that's the quotes, God message, God connection. I'm just not schooled in this, so I'm trying to understand.
Great. I'm loving this type of interaction, because so many people mask their words, coach their words. They're really afraid to say this pure essence that I am saying, because they feel they're going to be ostracized. And the energy that is the one says, because I am the scientist with 6 advanced degrees, people will listen to me. They won't poo-poo me. They won't say woo-woo, because I am certain of this energy. I have a palpable relationship with it, a one-on-one direct relationship with it. And that's what is necessary. Now, let's go to creating. How did that parkland? This is really the big story here, because we are going through so much suffering, and the screws are being turned up. We have wars in Ukraine, we have political divide, and this huge hatred amongst our countrymen right now. We have economic pressures. We have mass shootings daily on the news whenever you wake up. So why is this happening right now? Is it an accident? No, it is no accident. We are being asked to wake up. Do you want to keep creating this? Do you? There is an alternate way to go, to be. And that's why I'm here.
Find it.
Teach it, guide it. It's super easy if you know. I mean, I told you 45 years of like in the desert. Nothing here, nothing there. I looked under every rock. I've read thousands of books and studied with thousands of teachers. I read every night for about an hour. I devote meditation. I've studied with so many. So it's not easy, but once you do find someone so certain and so direct, the path becomes open for many, many people.
So some of the kids from the high school got active in politics, I guess, speaking out. But I don't recall, and I'm over here 3,000 miles away, but I'm very familiar with South Florida communities and affluence in that area and some of the people there. So what I'm stumbling around here to ask you a simple question. Were you able to connect? Were you able to teach parents and people in your community, Coral, whatever it's called, Coral Springs, to think?
Okay.
And use that as prayer or some kind of connection.
So largely this information is suppressed, and it is very powerful, right? It could scare and intimidate a lot of people, I would imagine, right? So when I would see someone and they didn't know what I was doing with them, I could easily help get them out of states of anxiety. But it's so funny you're asking me this, and I'm going to be totally transparent. I was guided to give a course on this material, an 8-week course. It just started. The 3rd week was yesterday. I'm doing it for free in Parkland. Okay. I got Parkland Recreation to give me a room for it for free. And I have spent my own money to advertise it. Now, I'm not charging anybody for it. I'm doing this out of the goodness of my soul and because I'm guided to do this. Can you guess how many people showed up? In the 3 weeks I've done it so far, it's 8 weeks.
I can't, I would imagine, because I'm in the PR business, it's a direct relationship to where you put the message out. So, and I can't imagine right now.
One person showed up one day.
Oh, that's terrible.
I'm like, the first day, one patient or one person showed up, and they seemed to be absorbing the information. And then the next day, no one. And then yesterday, no one. So I'm like, what's the disconnect? Is it me? Is it too powerful? Are people not ready? Am I delusional? And I'm certain I'm not delusional, but I don't know why. And if it's not just
I have to jump in.
Sure.
This is TV talk show.
Uh-huh.
Zoom. Free.
Good.
You should do this.
Well, I've been doing a master class for free as part of my book launch. And that was the first one had about 15 people on it. But it's like, as an unknown author, this is really, really tough to, I have no platform. So I'm just starting my own platform. And I'm guided to keep going, and that I will be shown the right path to take. But the fact that no one showed up when I'm doing this for free, where I would go and sit and give Reiki to the whole city of Parkland on my lunch hours as I was a working orthodontist, I'm so shocked that no one's coming out to learn it. Are they?
How did they find out about it? So anyway, I'm going to send you this program link, and you could chop it up and edit it if you want, but I don't care what you do with it. But what I'm going to do is keep it whole. But I would think that there is more power in the redistribution, not the live original, but in the redistribution, the marketing, and the channeling, whether it's through groups in LinkedIn or Facebook groups in your local area there, of just getting it out to all these different people. And call it something else. Call it, dumb it down in the headline, so people aren't put off or afraid or scratch their heads. Welcome them in to a way of, I don't want to say the word salvation, but understanding and putting difficult things to rest by thinking of them differently. And then you do your thing.
My title is Big Things Happen to Big Souls, and it's got a 50% open rate. So, people are opening it. It's just, is it too intimidating? Is it being in person with them? Do they want it from the privacy of their own home? So they
so how many years ago was this shooting? It
was 4 years ago.
Okay, and seems like longer though, doesn't it? But at least to me, but in others it's yesterday. So maybe that's the headline, and then your other headline as a sub thing underneath it. The real headline is to reach that audience, is the people who were impacted and who lived through that firsthand, and who either are in denial, or, I got chills just thinking about this for a second here, but or they are looking for a pathway, and they don't know where to go. I think you have something here, and I like to encourage you to get really simple-minded about this, about how to communicate what it's about, and let's talk about it. Think of a cursive script underneath it all. Let's talk about it and welcome people in, and maybe find a couple of partners in the community, whether it's a rabbi or a minister or a priest or whoever, teacher, and tell them to get the word out to their own Facebook groups. And it's free.
Mhm.
And here we're going to have a meeting, and, but meanwhile, we meet online.
Mhm.
Anyway, people could look at it on their phone or sit in front of a laptop like I'm doing here,
Mhm.
or show up.
Mhm.
You have a real powerful role to play.
Mhm.
Again, my background is very practical, commercial PR
Mhm.
for 40 years. So that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah, well, I appreciate your advice. And I that's the thing. When you know this and you're like, then you start to say, oh my God, I no longer suffer. Now, how do I teach this? You have to go back because
Well, suffering because you've got a different understanding as relevant to no understanding, or an understanding of fear or being pissed off, or but now you have a more peaceful understanding, and that's the guard all, the protection that
yes.
you're talking about, right? That
Yes.
makes you strong and invincible.
Oh, so here, just this, the state of divine trust tells you that nothing bad ever happens. You're completely held and safe no matter what your mind is saying to you. Now, if you feel that way and that invincible and that beautiful and that perfect and whole, how do you feed that to other people? By example. It's almost a vibration, Ed. It's almost a vibration that rolls off of you, and it rolls, like, I am literally told it goes out in the airways that you're on right now and changes people. It changes reality. This is so powerful when I'm speaking, and I know it is, and it has been suppressed. And it is time for humanity to know that, to choose a different reality, a different future, a different way of being. And it's so much simpler than we've been led to believe. We just need the right pathway. I'm not saying I'm the only one. I am absolutely not. I know there's wonderful people out there.
No, that's okay.
I know that I know what I know, and I am certain of this truth and these truths.
Ask, if I may ask, and we have to come to a close in the next 5 minutes. Sure. I don't want to, but the audience peaks at about 20 minutes, and then they just
okay.
Okay. So, and we can come back and do this again for sure. But you've been in South Florida a long time. In that community, which is what, about a half hour, 40 minutes south from where you are?
Yeah, where I am now. I did move north, but my practice was south. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So you must have relations or connection somehow with the local media, like
Coral Springs Talk.
Well, a local TV station.
There's no local TV stations. They're Fort Lauderdale and West Palm Beach, but there's no.
But that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they're going to have a community action program of some kind, like the PBS program. Here in San Diego, it's the public broadcasting is part of San Diego State University. Okay, very successful community penetration. Huge donor list, of which I'm one, and so they're always looking for ways to connect to a population in their community, not only for their own fundraising, but for just penetration. And then the commercial stations, they have very limited time because everything's commercialized and budgeted, but they're going to follow everything that PBS station does. So anyway, you make contact with whoever there is at the Miami station or the Fort Lauderdale station that deals with public broadcasting, TV, and have a coffee with that person. And sort of be a pest to make sure they're getting your message, and then have a coffee, right?
Mhm.
And you can give them this program just as an example
Mhm.
of the practical idea of reaching out, and that your experience of going into Parkman and one person shows up, and I that would be depressing. If I were a producer of that, I said, what is going on here? Well, it's in the messaging.
Mhm.
Okay, and that's the situation.
Yeah.
This is not a political show at all, but President Biden has had a terrible messaging problem the past year, and they've finally figured it out. And the Dobbs decision and the Supreme Court was like a godsend. Wake up, and this is it. And
Mhm.
just like that, it's shifted.
Mhm.
And so now the messaging is different and rallying around a cause, and it's working.
Mhm.
And anyway, it's not political, other than that's just a useful example of
Mhm.
communicating differently
Right.
when something's not working.
Yes, I get you. Yes.
Anyway, Divine Trust. Hold up that book again,
Sure.
please,
Mhm.
and pick out a favorite page or two, and tell us what's on that page and why is it there.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, we already know about that. Let's go here. This is beautiful and deep. I mean, everything. It's such a small book, but it's so profound. And it's on page 2. Our human design is such that somewhere during the process of being born, we undergo amnesia to the understanding that we are, in fact, the very embodiment of the divine itself. The longing and the urge to understand who we are and find the way home is common among all human beings, and is the purpose and the way presence, source, God comes to know itself. I mean, that's like the book in a nutshell right there. And deep. And is that, how do you take that, Ed?
I didn't really understand what you said.
You
I
did? Okay.
no, I got the meaning, but the words were very powerful words to you. But the I couldn't immediately, without reading it, I just listening and get these things on, so I can't really zero in on it. So I'm saying honestly that I didn't get it.
Okay. Well, I just took A out of it, and it's, there's quite a bit before that explaining the working model of existence. Let me find one other one. Okay, how about this as the state? This is the state that I live in regularly, and this is my come from. And you didn't
Your what?
my
Come
come
from.
from. It's
I got
how
it.
I
Okay.
live my
Okay.
life now. Okay, so this
Yeah.
is what is possible through this book and mastering what's in
Good
it.
idea.
Okay, it's important to understand that this source, this vast endless sea, wants each of us to see it, to know that we are it, and to trust it. It is said that when our light shines so bright, it is our turn to shine our light so that others may see their own light, their own beauty, and trust this source.
Yeah. So it's an example. This is an example, and from this, I experienced a new pathway, a new understanding, and that created more power.
Well, let me just finish those last 2 sentences. And once they do so, they no longer suffer. They are free to see their own divine truth and their own light. So very powerful and very esoteric, but the book brings it down into, chapter 3 starts with a specific process. So you too can understand this and see this. And it starts out the path, like I had to figure out, go work back. Okay, how did I get here? And then how am I going to teach this? So it started with these simple paths. Remember the book, it showed me, it gave me headlines and it outlined itself, and I was to follow this outline. And then it actually wrote itself. Like I don't even know where I was.
It's amazing. That's amazing.
It wrote itself in 5 days, and I cannot take credit for this human being here. It was definitely inspired completely. And when
Let me ask you a question about process here, because
Sure.
I'm, as I said, a long time in
You're
PR.
scratching your head.
I'm just scratching my head here. So, you know what? Did you record the thoughts, or did you actually sit there and type it all out, page after page after page?
Hand wrote it.
Handwrite it out. Oh my God.
And it
That,
was so
that
fast. Oh my God, it was so fast. And then when I started typing it into the computer, into, Word documents, I was like, wow. And it was almost like, where did this come from? This is so friggin' brilliant. It is so profound and beautiful.
like streaming, huh?
Oh,
It
it
just
was,
came out of you.
it was just, my hand was the vehicle through which it flowed. And I'm like, wow, this is brilliant.
So, if I may, the process there, okay, that took some time and it just flowed. One day, you probably, what, 4 o'clock in the morning, said, I can't lay here in bed anymore. I got work to do. And you began.
No, actually, it's a little more complicated, and we're going to go over time, but it's very, very compelling. After that 4-day retreat, on the last day, I got a call from my sister saying my dad, who was 93 at the time, was very ill, and she was taking him to an emergency room, but 8 minutes from my hotel room, where I rented a condo for a month for this retreat and to decompress from selling my practice. So just the timing was so bizarre. Why was I 2.5 or 3 hours away from my home, but you were right near where my dad was? And he actually died. It took him a month. We had him in hospice after that, but I was there almost every day with him. And if I had not rented that condo,
Right.
It's like, so the day he died, I had to get out of the condo. I didn't know he was going to die that day, because I was packing up to leave and I had to drive 2 or 3 hours south, and he died while I was driving and no one would call me and tell me. But I got home that day. My husband gave me the news, and I came in and started writing it that day, because something said, if you can write this and you trust to this degree to write this book, start this book on the day your dad dies, there's just something so holy. So I can't even, and sometimes the words I can't get out into, I can't get out, I can't find human words for it, but it was just so holy and profound that if I trusted in this source energy so much that I could start writing this book on such a day as that,
Powerful.
it meant so much. So it wrote itself in 5 days. So it wasn't in the middle of the night. And I can't even remember. I think I don't remember how it's a blur. I just know it took only 5 days, and I started on the day my dad died, and it wrote itself. And I don't even remember a lot of it. I kept the book that I hand wrote it all in so I could refer to it, for prosperity. But yeah.
That's a great story. Find one other page, and then we have to go. Regretful.
Okay, let's see. Oh, If you don't experience it, and in this case, remaining source energy, you aren't living the life you are meant to live. Once you surrender to divine trust, your life takes on a whole new and enriched level of living. It is almost like moving from living in black and white to living in rich, vibrant technicolor. We are actually bringing heaven to us. If you are ready and willing to embrace this knowledge, you will end suffering. And then I ask people, will you join me? Are you ready? And if so, read the book again because it's so profound.
Dr. Nancy Wiley, please hold up the book cover again.
Mm.
I have really loved this. Thank you for being my guest on Global TV Talk Show.
Thank you, Ed, and thank you to all your viewers and listeners. Have a wonderful day.
You've made my day. Thank you.